What if the very first chapter of our story had been torn away? What if the civilizations we celebrate as humanity's great beginnings, Egypt, Sumer, the Inca, and Maya, were not the dawn of human brilliance, but the echoes of something far older, something already ancient when the pyramids were new, across the world? The monuments of the past rise from stone and earth: Giza, Stonehenge, Machu Picchu. Colossal works of engineering and design, and yet, we are told they all emerged from nothing, almost overnight. But what if the official story isn't the full story? The version of history taught in our classrooms is straightforward, elegant in its simplicity, and perhaps a little too neat. For most of our existence, humans are said to have been hunters and gatherers, nomadic bands moving across the land, surviving from day to day. Then, around 10,000 years ago, a miracle of progress. Agriculture, the taming of crops and animals. The ability to stay in one place and build a surplus. That surplus led to villages, then to cities. And soon after, the first states and kingdoms, Sumer, in Mesopotamia, becomes the cradle of civilization. Developing writing, mathematics, laws, Egypt follows, with its grand monuments and gods written into stone. From there, the timeline branches into Greece, Rome, China, and beyond, a steady march of progress. From primitive to advanced, from darkness to light. It is, in many ways, a comforting story. It suggests order, inevitability, and progress, but history rarely plays by the rules we write for it. And when we look closer, cracks begin to appear. In 1994, on a dusty hill in southeastern Turkey, archaeologists uncovered something that should not exist. Göbekli Tepe, a vast complex of stone pillars carved with animals, symbols, and intricate patterns, arranged in circles and chambers like temples. Its age, at least 11,600 years old. Built at a time when, according to the textbooks, humanity was still chasing deer and gathering berries. This site predates agriculture, predates pottery, predates the wheel, and yet, the builders of Göbekli Tepe were quarrying, transporting, and raising megaliths weighing up to 20 tons. They were carving them with artistry and precision. They were organizing hundreds, perhaps thousands, of people to work toward a shared vision. So the question becomes, who taught them how to do this? Where did that knowledge come from? If hunters and gatherers could build this, then the entire timeline of human development may need to be rewritten. Another mystery emerges when we look at the so-called birthplaces of civilization. Take Egypt. The first true pyramids, those at Giza, appear not as crude experiments, but as perfection on a monumental scale, aligned with the cardinal directions to within fractions of a degree. Constructed with stone blocks so massive that even modern machines would struggle. Or consider Sumer, which bursts onto the stage of history with writing, astronomy, irrigation systems, metallurgy, and a complex legal code, seemingly all at once. Where are the half-finished experiments? The trial and error we expect from human invention? Where are the centuries of crude prototypes? The fumbling attempts, the false starts instead. These civilizations appear fully formed, as if they inherited a package of knowledge from somewhere else. Was this sudden brilliance truly spontaneous, or was it the echo of a forgotten legacy? A knowledge passed down from survivors of a world before our own. So when we step back, the official story begins to fray. We are asked to believe that hunter-gatherers, overnight, became temple builders, architects, astronomers, that whole civilizations, appeared fully armed with science, mathematics, and engineering. Is that truly the whole picture? Or are these cracks in the timeline pointing to something else? Something deeper, something older. The investigation begins here, with the first fingerprints of a lost world. Every crime story has its suspect. And when it comes to the mystery of lost civilizations, the finger points skyward. 12,800 years ago, at the very end of the last ice age, something extraordinary happened. The Earth was warming, glaciers were retreating, animals and humans were flourishing, and then, almost instantly, the world froze again. This sudden return to Ice Age conditions is known as the Younger Dryas. It lasted for more than 1,000 years, and it devastated ecosystems, animals, and human populations. But what could trigger such a catastrophe? The answer, many scientists now believe, is not found on Earth, but in the heavens. This is the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. It suggests that a fragmented comet, or perhaps several, entered the atmosphere around 12,800 years ago. Some pieces exploded in the air with the force of nuclear bombs. Others slammed into the massive ice sheets that still covered much of North America and Europe. The results were apocalyptic. Archaeologists and geologists point to what they call the Black Mat, a mysterious, dark sediment layer found across 4 continents, always at the same date, 12,800 years ago. Beneath this layer, mammoths, mastodons, and giant ground sloths roam. Above it, they are gone, and within the layer itself, strange clues, forensic traces of unimaginable violence, microspherules, tiny droplets of molten rock formed at extreme temperatures, nanodiamonds, crystals created under pressures greater than volcanic eruptions, platinum anomalies, rare and precious metals concentrated far above natural levels. Each one of these clues whispers the same story. Earth was struck. From above, imagine the scene. A clear morning sky suddenly torn apart. Fiery fragments streaking across the atmosphere, each explosion releasing the energy of thousands of Hiroshima bombs, igniting continent-wide wildfires, the forests of North America and Europe turning into an inferno, animals fleeing as firestorms race faster than they can run, glacial ice sheets struck by cosmic debris, releasing walls of melt water, titanic floods scouring the land, carving new valleys, reshaping entire regions overnight, and as smoke and dust filled the sky, sunlight dimmed, temperatures plunged. The Earth was thrown back into an ice age. If such an event happened, how would humanity remember it? For generations, stories would be told around fires. Tales of the day when fire rained from the sky, when the seas rose and swallowed the world. And remarkably, more than 500 cultures across the globe share flood legends. In the book of Genesis, Noah builds his ark to survive the deluge. In Mesopotamia, the Epic of Gilgamesh tells of a flood that drowns the world. In Hindu tradition, Manu is warned of a great flood by a divine fish. From the Americas to Polynesia, from Siberia to Africa, the story repeats. Is it coincidence? Or are these myths fragments of a collective memory? The echo of the Younger Dryas Cataclysm. Perhaps our ancestors did not imagine these stories. Perhaps they were survivors, passing on the memory of the day the sky itself turned against them. And if the world truly was shattered by a cosmic strike, then what else was lost with it? Not just animals and landscapes, but perhaps entire chapters of human history, erased in fire and flood, in the ruins that remain. Might we find the fingerprints of civilizations older than any we've been taught to believe? The investigation continues. When it comes to lost civilizations, Words can be doubted, myths can be dismissed, but stone does not lie. Across the world, from the sands of Egypt to the high Andes of Peru, to the ruins of the Near East, and even beneath the seas of Japan, there are architectural fingerprints, traces of knowledge, skill, and engineering far beyond what we are told was possible thousands of years ago. Let us begin in Egypt, with the Great Pyramid of Giza. At first glance, it is simply a massive pile of stone, but look closer. Its sides align almost perfectly with the four cardinal directions, so precisely that modern surveyors measure the error in mere fractions of a degree. The base covers 13 acres, with blocks weighing several tons each, stacked with astonishing precision. Some joints are so tight that even a razor blade cannot fit between them, and the cuts themselves, clean, sharp, exact. Many researchers argue that even today, with laser-guided equipment, it would be a challenge to replicate this level of perfection. So the question is, if this was the work of simple copper chisels and ropes, how did they do it? Travel halfway across the globe, high into the Andes of Peru, at sites like Pumapunku and Ollantaytambo, we find stones of an entirely different character. These are not soft limestone, but andesite, a volcanic rock harder than granite. And yet, here they are, carved with perfect 90-degree angles, drilled with mysterious circular holes, and fitted into interlocking shapes like giant three-dimensional puzzles. The most famous are the H-shaped blocks of Pumapunku, each one unique, yet each fitting perfectly with its neighbor. The level of accuracy suggests advanced tools, perhaps even technologies we do not yet fully understand. Again, we must ask, how was this achieved? By cultures supposedly without metal tools or the wheel. In Lebanon lies another enigma, Baalbek. Here, in the foundations of the Roman temple complex, we find stones of unimaginable size. The so-called stone of the pregnant woman weighs an estimated 1,000 tons, cut, shaped, and moved from its quarry. Nearby, even larger blocks have been found, some exceeding 1,200 tons. For comparison, that is the weight of more than 200 African elephants. No crane in the modern world has ever lifted such a block intact, and yet, here they rest, fitted into a platform that has endured for millennia. What kind of knowledge, what kind of techniques made this possible? In South America, whispers remain of a forgotten technique. The Spanish chroniclers of the conquest recorded strange tales, that the Inca had a way of softening stone, allowing it to be molded like clay, before it hardened again. Could this explain the seamless joins of Cusco's walls, the polygonal stones that fit together like a living puzzle, with no mortar at all? Mainstream science remains skeptical, yet the perfection of these walls still leaves experts puzzled to this day. Perhaps the most astonishing clue of all is not found in a single site, but in the similarities between them. In Egypt, at Giza; in Peru, at Pumapunku; in Lebanon, at Baalbek; and even beneath the waters of Yonaguni in Japan, we see the same themes. Colossal blocks of stone moved as though weightless, joints cut so precisely they defy time, designs that echo one another across oceans and continents. Cultures that, according to mainstream history, had no contact, no shared language, no shared knowledge, and yet their monuments speak the same architectural tongue. Is this coincidence? A shared human instinct? Or could these be the fingerprints of an older, global blueprint? A civilization erased from history yet remembered in stone. And if these megaliths are the evidence left behind, Then what else might this forgotten civilization have known? Mathematics, astronomy, maps of the Earth long before history began. The trail of fingerprints continues. Architecture is only one layer. If we look deeper, the evidence suggests that this lost civilization also carried advanced knowledge of the Earth and of the stars above. In 1513, an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis drew a map of the world. At first glance, it looks like any other early modern chart, but one detail has left historians puzzled for centuries. The southern portion appears to show the coastline of Antarctica, not as it exists today, buried under miles of ice, but as it would look, ice-free. Modern surveys using sonar beneath the ice reveal coastlines that match strikingly well with this ancient map. How could a sailor in the 16th century have charted a continent hidden under ice for tens of thousands of years? Some researchers believe Piri Reis did not invent this map, but copied it from far older source maps, now lost to time. Perhaps relics of an age when humanity knew far more about the world than we are told. From the seas, we turn our eyes to the heavens. In Egypt, 3 pyramids rise at Giza, and for decades, scholars have noticed something remarkable. The layout of the pyramids mirrors the 3 stars of Orion's belt. The alignment is not perfect by today's sky, but astronomers point out that if you rewind the clock to around 10,500 BC, the correlation becomes exact, and this is not unique. At Angkor Wat in Cambodia, the vast temple complex aligns with the constellation Draco. Again, not as the stars appear today, but as they looked thousands of years ago. Is this coincidence? Or did these ancient builders possess knowledge of the slow wobble of the Earth's axis, the precession of the equinoxes, a cycle of 26,000 years? And then we return to Göbekli Tepe, the oldest known megalithic temple. On one pillar, known as the Vulture Stone, strange carvings depict animals, symbols, and a scorpion-like figure. Researchers from the University of Edinburgh proposed that this is not random art, but a sky map. The symbols, they argue, correspond to constellations, marking a date around 10,950 BC, a date that coincides uncannily with the Younger Dryas impact event. Could it be that the builders of Göbekli Tepe were recording a cosmic disaster they had witnessed, and encoding their knowledge of the heavens in stone, if true? This suggests they understood precession, celestial mechanics, and catastrophic astronomy, long before our textbooks allow. So, what are we left with? A map that should not exist, monuments aligned with stars across millennia, and an ancient temple that may have recorded the memory of a cosmic cataclysm. This is no longer just architecture, it is a science of earth and sky, geometry and astronomy, preserved like an echo from a civilization erased from history. If their knowledge was this advanced, then what else might they have understood? So, what do we have? A planet scarred by a cataclysm, monuments that seem impossible, maps that chart a forgotten world, and knowledge of the heavens far beyond its time. When we place these fragments together, a picture begins to emerge. The story of a global civilization, wiped away and buried in silence, but the question remains, who were they? Some leap to the idea of ancient aliens, yet maybe the truth is far closer to home. Perhaps they were people like us, a branch of humanity that rose to heights we can barely imagine, only to be lost in the flood of time. If so, then our history is not a straight line of progress, but a cycle of rise, catastrophe, and rebirth. History is not a book already written. It is an investigation still unfolding, These ruins are not silent, they are speaking to us. If only we choose to listen, every stone, every map, every alignment with the stars is a voice from the deep past asking us not to forget. Which piece of evidence speaks to you the most? Is it the Piri Reis map, the impossible stones of Baalbek, the cosmic code of Göbekli Tepe, and what great mystery of the past would you like us to explore next? Let us know in the comments, because this investigation belongs to all of us. If you've joined us on this journey, subscribe, share, and stay with us, because the quest for our lost past has only just begun.